Throughout history, there have been movies that defined their generations. Movies so iconic that they would become the measurement from which all the following ones would be judged. Movies that were a perfect reflection of the way of thinking of its time, but that also had something of value to offer to the times that followed. Movies that simply don't age. Movies that would perfectly encapsulate the meaning of the word masterpiece and enter history as not only the best the medium has to offer, but also as the best humanity has to offer. This is one of these movies. Originally released in the US as just Monster Zero, Invasion of the Astro-Monster is the 6th movie in the Godzilla franchise and the last one of the Golden Age tetralogy. This film was the first actual co-production between US and Japan, as since the very beginning it had input from American producer Henry G. Saperstein, who at the time was interested in bringing monster movies to his fellow countrymen. Among other things, he convinced Toho to use an American actor in the cast, in hopes of increasing the interest of an American audience. So they got Nick Adams, who had already worked in Frankenstein Conquers the World, to add his Yankee charm to the flick. The funny thing is that, in the end, the movie only saw an American release in 1970, almost 5 years after its Japanese premiere. This was probably due to lack of interest from the distributor and also Toho not being happy with the distribution deal. Without this background information behind us, let's start with the plot of the movie. Sometime during the late 1960s, the World Space Authority discovers a 10th planet in the solar system, just beyond Jupiter, and calls it Planet X. In an attempt to find out more about this new place, astronauts Glenn and Fuji are sent aboard the spaceship P-1 to the surface of the mysterious planet. Since these days these movies can't stay 5 minutes in a single plot, let's get to Earth. Haruno, who is Fuji's sister because of course he has one, accompanies her boyfriend called in a business meeting with a woman named Namikawa. He sells her his newest invention, called the Lady Guard Alarm, which, considering the name and the sound it makes, I will assume is some sort of rape whistle. Comedy gold. And no, I'm not being sarcastic. The P-1 finally makes it to Planet X. Glenn and Fuji spread to better explore the surface, but after just a few moments, the Japanese astronaut has lost not only his partner, but also his entire ship along with him. It doesn't take long though for Fuji to be conducted by an ethereal voice into an elevator and through a series of unnecessarily mysterious tunnels. No, I'm kidding. All the mystery is for Fuji not to get lost. Imagine getting tossed into a room with, like, 6 corridors coming out of it. What a nightmare. What I like the most about the beginning of this movie is how suspenseful it is. It takes your time to wonder what the hell is going on as Fuji walks through these super surreal corridors. Now would be a nice time to speak of how gorgeous this movie looks. And I'm talking about both the production design and the special effects. The sets are absolutely stunning to look at, and so are the space scenes, the UFO scenes, and, of course, the monster scenes. There's something deliciously charming about this movie's aesthetic. Fuji eventually finds Glenn, and the astronauts are then introduced to the inhabitants of the planet. Aliens who call themselves Xilians. Get it? Because they are aliens from Planet X. The Xilians waste no time in explaining the reason why they brought the 2 astronauts to their base. As it turns out, the surface of the planet is plagued by the constant attacks of a monster which the natives call Monster Zero, but which the Earthlings correctly identify as being So the Zillions make the following proposition. Earth lends them Godzilla and Rodan, who have already defeated Ghidorah in the past, and in exchange they can have the cure for cancer. Of course that this is way too big for the two astronauts, so they head back to Earth and discuss the proposal with the rest of humanity, who is a little suspicious and believes this to be too convenient. Meanwhile, Tetsuo still hasn't received any money from the invention and Fuji still thinks he's a bum, disapproving his relationship with his sister. But Glenn tries to defend him, saying he's not that bad of a fella. I am astonished with how much timing and chemistry these two have, despite the fact that none of the actors speak each other's language. Nick Adams delivers his lines in English, just to be dubbed by a Japanese actor in post-production, meaning he probably had to know Akira Takarada's lines by heart while recording. I love this, it's just the best. But anyway, he could go on and on defending the guy he barely knows, but Glenn has to leave for a date with none other than Namikawa. The next day though, Glenn asks Fuji to take a ride with him. They head into a lake in which the Americans spend the night with Namikawa in a cabin, and where he swears he saw her talking with one of the Zillion leaders during the night. Getting into the lake, they are informed that Godzilla has been located sleeping deep inside of it, and must stay away. To everyone's surprise, however, what actually gets out of the lake is not Godzilla, but instead 3 Zillion UFOs. When questioned about already being secretly in the planet, the aliens answer by saying they were afraid the monsters could do more damage to Earth if they waited too long. Yeah, of course. So, the UFOs grab Godzilla, Rodan, the 2 astronauts and their boss, Dr. Sakurai, and head to Planet X. Still on Earth, Mrs. Namikawa goes into the house in the lake where she and Glenn spend the night. There, we find out that her company is nothing more than a cover for the Zillion's operations on Earth, and she's one of their agents, although they are not a little bit happy with how close she and Glenn are getting. Outside, Tetsuo, who was getting suspicious of Mrs. Namikawa and decided to follow her, starts looking around the place. The Earthlings finally arrive at Planet X and get a front seat to see the epic showdown between the 3 monsters. And I must say that this fight really is something. Not only is the setting pretty epic, but the monsters actually have a more coherent brawl, with Rodan attacking from above like a bird of prey and Godzilla using his atomic breath against King Ghidorah, an ability he probably forgot he had during the climax of the last movie. I mean, look at that! He's shooting from behind the cover like he's in freaking Gears of War or something. But fear not, fans of throwing rocks, because Godzilla is still more than capable of some boulder tossing. Just to drive home the point of how ineffective Godzilla has been. Wait, did he just jump at Ghidorah? The fight ends with a victory for the monsters of Earth. Okay, I need to get this out of the way because I've seen people referring to this moment as Godzilla dancing. And if you search for Godzilla dance on YouTube, this scene is going to pop up. But this is not a dance. He's punching the air and jumping. Of happiness. I know this doesn't make it any less silly, but I needed to clarify it. While the battle was happening, Glenn and Fuji seized the chance to escape and take a better look at the aliens' base, and discover not only a room full of gold, but also 2 women who look identical to Namikawa. Apparently, gold is more common than water in Planet X, something the astronauts are told after their hosts find them. The Zillions are not happy about the whole situation, but send the 3 humans home anyway, along with an audio tape with the cure for cancer. Rodan and Godzilla stay behind on Planet X, where they won't cause any more problems for humanity. 博士、僕たちの取った方法これで良かったのでしょうか。ゴジラとラドンを見てください。
まるで置いてきぼりにする僕たちを恨んでるようですね。
On Earth, they play the tape and find out its only content is a message informing humanity that Earth is now a Xilian colony and that they must surrender. Otherwise, the aliens will unleash the fury of the three monsters under their control over the planet. For some reason, everybody loses their shit with the news, and several fights erupt between those who are pro-surrender and the ones who are with Alex Jones in the matter.
You'll never defeat the human spirit! You'll never defeat God! You'll never win!
In the middle of this confusion, Glenn finds Namikawa, who admits to be a Xilian agent keeping an eye on the World Space Authority, but to have genuinely fallen in love with him and now begs for the American to surrender to the invaders so they can live together. Glenn refuses, just as a troop of alien soldiers enter the room and take him away, but not before one last display of affection from Namikawa, where she puts something in his pocket. Since humanity didn't respond to the Xilian threat, they placed the three monsters on Earth and start a countdown to the invasion. Somewhere else, Fuji and other scientists, who look way shorter than he is, by the way, figure out a way to interrupt the aliens' control over the creatures. The problem is that every attempt of using their weapons against the invaders is frustrated by the aliens' superior firepower, which halts humanity's plans. Glenn is thrown into a cell alongside
完全防音か。壁ばっかりじゃないんです。鉄格子だって鉄じゃない。音がしませんよ。
How do you soundproof the bars of a cell? While in prison, they both discover the notes Namikawa left for Glenn, in which she reveals that the rape whistle sound can really mess up with the Xilian's physiology, and this is the reason they bought it from him, to destroy it. With that clarified, Tetsuo takes one of the devices out of his pocket and activates it. Right now, the guards must really regret not inspecting the guy to see if he was carrying the one thing on Earth that can mess up with their plans. Once both of them are free, they head to the good guy's base and tell them to start transmitting the sound through all conceivable channels in an attempt to paralyze the aliens' operations. And if that sounds a lot like the climax of Mars Attacks, it's because it is. And I really doubt it was unintentional. Humanity's plan works, and Rodan and Godzilla are free to fight back King Ghidorah. At the same time, the army starts to counterattack the aliens, in a pretty epic climax that sees all the heroes making the day of the villains considerably shittier, while Akira Ifukubi's Monster Zero March play in the background. Godzilla displays some pretty intense boxing moves, but Dum Dum Rodan trips over Ghidorah and Goji, making all the three of them roll down a cliff into the ocean. King Ghidorah is the only one that gets out of the water, but the heroes have no doubt that the two good guys are still there somewhere. And so the day is saved, with Fuji finally approving his sister's relationship with Tetsuo and Glenn being sent back to Planet X as Earth's first ambassador there. Yay? Looking back on this period of the franchise, Ishiro Honda would say that he was very unhappy with the overall results of his films. Toho would keep pushing for a less serious tone in the movies, at the same time the budget for them decreased by the installments. All of this because of the rise of color TV in Japan, which was turning people away from the theaters. Of course, that I am not the best person to talk about someone else's work, and I understand Honda's frustration, but I, alongside several other Godzilla fans, don't believe this period was all for nothing. Just the fact that him and the other people from the production team managed to do some positively visually stunning movies with an ever-decreasing budget is for me proof of this man's talent and expertise at their craft. And this expertise culminated in Invasion of the Astro-Monster, which is, for me, the very best this franchise has to offer. It's tacky and ridiculous, but also surprisingly self-aware of all that, what just makes its charm to be very honest. This movie is the apex of this series at its peak. These 4 films are not just the cornerstone of the franchise, they are also the cornerstone of the entire genre. Without them, there will be no Gamera or Ultraman, and certainly nothing that follow on their footsteps. And at the end of the day, this is the lasting legacy of Ishiro Honda and the others that crafted the Godzilla Golden Age. But everything must come to an end, and the franchise would soon enter in a decline that will last for over a decade before Toho pulled the plug on it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. During the following weeks, we will take a closer look at all the highs and lows of what is perhaps the most turbulent period of the franchise. It's certainly going to be a fun ride.